Welcome to Changing the Coalfields. My name is Brandon Dennison. This is a podcast of Coalfield Development, a community economic development organization based in the southern part of West Virginia. We are talking about change in what's traditionally been known as the coalfields. And today we're joined by a friend of mine and a colleague and a fellow social entrepreneur who I really enjoy working with and I really respect a lot, Chris Yura.
Hello, thank you for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on the podcast. We've done a lot of fun things together, but we've not done a podcast together before. So this will be fun.
Very true. Very true. It's our time together has definitely been eventful with lots of exciting times and more times in the future. I hope.
Definitely. Good way to put it. Good way to put it. And I'll sort of start at the end of the story actually, and then we'll go back to the beginning and do the long version of really just your life and your experience as a social entrepreneur. But I do want to make sure towards the top, we're working together on a very exciting event to be held here on the Marshall campus, which is where we do the podcast at the iCenter studio. So I should thank the Marshall University iCenter. And Chris, can you tell folks about what this exciting event is?
Absolutely. Yeah, we're very excited. October 4th, we'll be having, actually 3rd and 4th, we're having the Appalachian Social Enterprise Summit hosted by Marshall University and Coalfield Development. And this is really a place that we hope will grow into an exciting platform for social enterprise in the region. This year we have Ohio University, Virginia Tech, UVA-Wise, WVU, Marshall University, Rural Action being really the co-organizers and the organizers of the event. And it's really,
I mean, just to hear you list all those together is amazing.
It really is. And, bring a group of people together that are innovators and come from various places, some Appalachian, some not, some transplants. And the ideas that kind of flow from these meetings is just incredible. So as we develop out the content for the 3rd and the 4th of October, we expect it to be pretty stellar. And we're really excited to open it up to the public that'd like to join. And we can provide links and addresses where you can do that. If you visit the Coalfield website, you can find out more information.
Yeah, we're gonna have a dinner the night before at the West Edge Factory, which is a Coalfield development property where you can see social enterprises in action and have farm to table dinner, really good, fresh, healthy, local food. The full day, we're gonna have a keynote by Brad Smith, president of Marshall University, but also extremely successful business person himself, former CEO of Intuit. We're gonna have a couple of different pitch contests. We're gonna be talking opportunity sectors like technology, agriculture, downtown revitalization. It just fills me with hope to see it all come together and to know how much good stuff's happening in Appalachia right now.
It is. And honestly, just being, involved with this content creation, it's given me such an insight into things that I had no idea were going on. So I think if you do plan on coming or attending virtually, if we have that option, just be ready to be surprised and inspired. Luckily enough, we have this as a real regional event this year, and I think we could even have another part of Appalachia joining potentially a little later in the game here as we approach October quickly. But to have perspectives, insights, experiences from all these different regions is something I think we all can learn from. The goal for this is really to come out of it with a sense of excitement, enthusiasm around social enterprise, and then also to inspire. We need entrepreneurs. We need people to move back to the coal fields. And we want to give them some ideas of things we see as low-hanging fruit. So very exciting event, and can't wait for it to get here not too far in the distant future.
So Chris, learning more about you and your story.
I did. I was born and raised in Morgantown, where I am today, and was fortunate enough to have two parents that worked in higher education, I think similar to you, Brandon. I basically grew up on the campus of WVU in Allen Hall, which is where the psychology department is. So my parents are both psychologists, and I have an older brother and a little sister. So grew up in the, had an interesting experience because I grew up kind of in the city for West Virginia.
Appalachian city. Most
Yeah,
would call it a town.
right, exactly. It's about, 40,000 without students. My mother's family has been in Appalachia since colonial days. And some of the land we still have in our family was given for service in the Revolutionary War. So we go very far back, and some of my family still lived, in Lewis County. And so I really, the one thing I really loved about growing up here is that I got to see so many different sides to life. And it really wasn't defined by how much money you had. Something that I look back on, and I kind of, I'm really glad that I had that experience because, the economic barriers that are here in life, they were very blurry back then, growing up here. And I think that it was a great way to grow up. I had a great childhood, and yeah, very proud to be from West Virginia.
What are some of your happiest childhood memories growing up in West Virginia?
I think, my favorite was going down to my farm, my family's farm in Lewis County. That was always a big treat for us. As having an older brother, I basically had a built-in best buddy. So we're really close in age. So we would just go in the woods, and it was basically a childhood that my highlights were all outdoors. I'm a very big, passionate outdoors person. It's hard for me to really sit inside very long. So I think I'm even more antsy than my kids. And so, I grew up really just being outside a lot, which, was really, I think it was a great way to entertain ourselves, a great way to learn about nature. For my brother and myself, it actually was good training as well, as we ended up getting to go to college for free because of it.
So you mentioned, we'll jump around a little bit, which is fine. So you're raising your own family here now.
Yeah, I started a little late. So I'm 42. So I started late, but I started fast. And I got married 5 years ago, and I have my fourth child being born in March. So
Rapid succession there.
it is. And they all are named after West Virginia places and special places for my wife and I. Who also is a very passionate person about the outdoors and a native to West Virginia from Shinston. So I have Cooper for Cooper's Rock. I have Seneca for Seneca's Rock down in the Panhandle area. I have Shenandoah for Shenandoah River. And then my next child will be born in March, and his name is going to be Weston, after Weston, which is where my family is originally from.
That's awesome. Congrats on the one that's coming, and on having just such a beautiful family.
Oh, I appreciate it. God's been good. And, it was a dream of mine to always come back to Appalachia. And, I was away for a little while in my life, and I wanted to come back to raise my family. And I've been great, blessed enough to have the opportunity.
So you mentioned growing up, loving being outside, being on campus with your parents in higher ed. And then you mentioned training because you were an athlete, which led to a scholarship. So tell us a little bit about your athletic career.
Yeah, again, I think it was born out of a combination of being close to a college campus and getting to go to the Mountaineer games and seeing all the kind of the traditions and the passion around sports, and having no cable television and no internet. So two of those, some of those things played into my brother and I playing outside a lot. And my parents, again, they were very, and they are still amazing people, but never was pressured into it. We naturally kind of gravitated to some of the contact sports, and started with hockey. And God bless my parents. They drive us all over the place and early in the morning to play hockey, and it evolved into football. And was grateful that had a chance to kind of excel at that sport, and my older brother as well. So we ended up playing in high school at Morgantown High School, and he received a scholarship to West Virginia University, and I received one to Notre Dame to play football.
And what position did you play?
So in high school, I played running back, and I would play defense every once in a while. But when I got to Notre Dame, I played defensive back as a true freshman. And actually, I think my second or third game was against Tom Brady. So,
Are you
that,
serious?
yeah, yeah, that ages me a little bit. And so, yeah, then I always want to be on the offensive side of the ball because that was kind of naturally what I really loved running the football, and that was where my passion was. So I asked to be switched over as a sophomore, and then I played tailback and mainly special teams. And then I decided to get bigger because I was needed kind of at a tweener position between a halfback and a fullback. So I got up to about 230, and I finished my career blocking and, and running into people as fast as possible. So I was fortunate enough to letter all 4 years and end 4 years. So I was very, very excited about that. I unfortunately didn't have the ability to go on to play, but my goal was always to play in college, and it was to letter four. So, having reached that, I was
College. I mean, you played at Notre Dame. Let's talk about a passionate following at the highest level.
It is. It's an amazing community, and I tell you, in West Virginia, there's only a few pockets of places that really love it, and it's mainly because of the 1988 national championship game, in which West Virginia played against Notre Dame and they lost. And I can tell you that when I decided to go to Notre Dame in high school, it wasn't a friendly crowd my senior year, and received some pretty disturbing letters in the mail from upset fans. So, so yeah, it was definitely not the fan favorite of West Virginia, but a great place to get an education and to play college football.
Good thing about West Virginia, there's a lot of good things about Appalachian culture. Maybe a slight drawback is we do sort of hold on to grudges for a very long time.
Yeah, that was one that I didn't realize how deep the football one was against Notre Dame until committing, and then I started to understand it much better. And luckily enough, I think has calmed down now since I've made a return. But yeah, it was definitely, again, leaving West Virginia was tough. It was hard for me to leave here, but I felt that God was leading me in a different direction, and I always wanted to come back. So my goal was always to once I had the opportunity to leave, I always knew I wanted to come back. It's just a matter of when and how. And that kind of just after college, it was really, I didn't know, to be
What are
honest.
some of the key things you learned at Notre Dame, and what were some of the seeds planted there that maybe would grow into something bigger like later on in your life?
One of the big things that I learned when I went to Notre Dame is that I started to understand a little bit about the perspective others had towards Appalachia. I didn't realize kind of the presumptions and thoughts that people regularly talked about regarding Appalachia in not a positive light. And I didn't understand that. I didn't really understand that it was that strong outside of the region, that people kind of looked down upon the area. And when I went to Notre Dame, interestingly enough, they actually have a huge seminar dedicated to Appalachia. And Brandon, you're one of the featured speakers a couple of years ago, and it's a big deal, very big deal there. So I think what I recognized was, wow, I didn't realize that there was real, like, we lived in a place where the poverty was more real than other places. And then I also didn't realize that there also was this effort to kind of help assist the region in a large capacity. So when I started learning about the Appalachian Seminar at Notre Dame, I started to understand a little more of the work that was being done in the region. And then also, for myself, I think it also developed more pride of where I was from, because I think there was a lot of misinterpretations, generalizations about West Virginia and other places in Appalachia.
You also learned about this famous thing called the shirt.
That's right. Yes, I did. One of those traditions, and there's some really neat ones for Notre Dame, but one of them started in the 90s that a group of students got these T-shirts together for it essentially sells a fundraiser. And it ended up becoming the largest single collegiate apparel program in the country, in the world. And it's called The Shirt. And so when you would run out of the tunnel at the stadium, you would be able to identify your fan base very quickly because everybody had the same shirt on. And each year it changed with the color. There was a committee. And for me, it was something that really kind of captured my imagination as a player, just because it was so easy to figure out who was on your side, and you kind of look to them, I think, whenever you were in a opposing stadium. And little did I know that apparel would be in my future, but the power of the symbol of it and the unification of it really stuck with me. So this is where the story gets a little different, I think. It's it's an interesting path. Yeah, my passion really, when I was in college, I really loved exercise physiology. I just very passionate about it. Ever since when I was probably 12, I started really getting passionate about lifting weights, and my strength coaches were kind of my heroes. And I really felt that was what I wanted to do. I thought that was kind of my skill set and where I was getting.
Trainer?
Yeah, I thought I wanted to be a strength coach for a college, or specifically for football. And so I was kind of given the advice that maybe for a year you should be a trainer, do some advancement with in the education sector with exercise physiology, and just see if how passionate you are about it. So after college, I was fortunate enough to get a job at the Four Seasons in Miami, Florida, at a place called the Sports Club LA, which it's like a really famous gym, or it was, and really for kind of a higher end clientele. So yeah, basically went from South Bend to South Beach. You couldn't talk about some polar extremes. It was definitely culture shock, and it was an amazing place. It just was so different than where I was in West Virginia and in South Bend. And during my time there, it was a new gym. It was a new hotel that opened up. So the Miami Herald sent a reporter to take a picture of the facility, and they asked me if I'd be in it. And the picture, it was a really funny picture. I think I have a tuxedo top on with a dumbbell in one hand and some glasses, like this is the creme de la creme of working out. It was the vibe. And so I took it, and I thought, okay, well, that's never going to be seen anywhere. That's just going to go to the back page or something. And sure enough, it was on the front page. My dad actually got it framed, so I have it. It's pretty funny.
Never forget.
Yeah, he made sure of it. It got picked up on the AP wire too, so it actually went to a lot of places that you just wouldn't expect it to go. So yeah, I from that I started getting requests and scouted to do modeling, which again, not something that I would ever thought of or thought was a career path, but it seemed like at the time it was like, wow, people get paid to do this, so maybe I should see where this goes.
So where did it go?
It ended up taking me to New York City. And it was my home base for 5 years, Manhattan, and modeled for Ford models. And it took me all over the world and all over the country. So I got to spend time in Milan and Munich. I did various jobs in Colorado and Texas and kind of all over the place. And in conjunction with that, when you're a model, when you're Zoolandering it for your rent, essentially. For those of you that don't know what Zoolander is, please go watch the movie. I've realized the older I've gotten, when I use that reference, like half the room doesn't quite get it. So
too much.
Yeah, it's a quiet. It's like it was funny in 2002 for sure. Again, a very different career path. A couple of things that I learned. Really, it was just sales. It's pretty much what it came down to. Obviously, you had to fit the clothes and you had to have the look, but you also had to have the personality that people wanted to work with you. And you just ended up getting used to going to cold calls and cold rooms and just being rejected constantly. That was really the life of a model slash actor, which again is another Zoolander reference, but very true, because part of my gig was also a kind of a reoccurring spot on All My Children as a bartender. And so I would do these jobs, and it was fun. It was definitely, a whole nother side of life that I'd never had been exposed to, and learned a ton. Also had a lot of time on my hands, to be honest, because in that field, you don't work every day. It's if you work once or twice a week, it's actually really good, because the pay rates are so high. So you go on castings and you have a lot of time to really, to do whatever else, unless you had to have a side job, at a restaurant. For me, the seasons which I didn't have to have a side job in a restaurant, I got in touch and I got connected with Redeemer Presbyterian Church, which is a church in New York City started by Tim Keller in the late 80s. And really, that church changed my life, really got me turned on to volunteering in the city, and connected with a group called New York Cares, which is an incredible nonprofit that allows people basically 1 day volunteer opportunities on a whim. So if you basically wanted to know what you didn't have anything to do tomorrow at 3 o'clock, you could get on this website and you could volunteer in the Bronx to the SAT prep, or you could go and help with a feeding program. Like, had opportunities all over the city, all the different boroughs, all different focuses. It wasn't just one thing, so you could really learn a lot about a lot of organizations. So through that, I mean, it was amazing. I had so many different experiences of learning different walks of life, different life circumstances, and some amazing people that really were living their lives for other people. And I was just inspired completely by it.
I have to say, I've done a few different, panels and public events with Chris, and it always gets quite a reaction when you're telling your story, and then it sort of just takes this sharp left turn into male modeling.
Yeah, it's so weird too, because on the surface, it is like the most, I mean, it really is like a very self-centered profession, because you are always thinking of yourself. Like, you're thinking if you got the job or if you have this. I mean, I guess it's like everything in life, but it is a little more in your face, that it's about yourself. And at the same time, for me personally, it was probably the most inspiring time, because I got to see places and people and meet people that I never would have ever met, and have opportunities that I never would have had. And it's and really sometimes just to be a fly on the wall, like, and not a lot of executives and meetings are expecting the model to be listening in on the marketing strategy for the year. You're just supposed to be there to wear the blazer, and leave the room when they tell you, so
soaking in all their knowledge.
Exactly. And it really was that. And so during this season, I remember the day I was in a fitting room, and I was with a company that was making apparel from what they considered to be a more sustainable source. And the clothing was amazing. It felt great. The story made you want to wear it. And I was just like, wow, I can't believe it, that this is actually, better for the environment, better for people. They gave us a bunch of samples when we left, and like, I was kind of touting this stuff. And somebody mentioned to me, like, hey, I don't know if it's all that it's cracked up to be. The whole idea of greenwashing really wasn't out yet. I mean, this was like, 2006, maybe. It was pretty early. But they mentioned some things, and I was like, so I did a little digging, and I found that, yeah, that in fact, this brand was basically touting something that at the end of the day was not better for the environment or for the people that were actually making it. And I don't know, I had this kind of a eureka moment where I was like, well, I was all bought in. I was telling people about it. I would have paid more for it. But it actually wasn't better. And so, drawing from my experiences from my past, and specifically with Notre Dame and the shirt and this power that clothing can have, I was like, you know what, maybe you could make something that actually was better. Like, what if you did it right, and you did something that was actually benefiting a community, benefiting our planet, and you didn't try to go around it. You actually embrace that as what you were. So through this kind of thought process, the idea for creating Sustain You clothing came about.
We're going to spend a lot of time on Sustain You, but a couple short questions as we transition into that vision that was sown in New York. You got to be in a Bon Jovi music video.
I did. You can welcome to wherever you are. About a minute and 20 seconds into it, you could see me washing windows. It's I think I should have gotten nominated for something, but I don't know if there's an award for that non-speaking role. But
I didn't realize you got to travel so much through this gig. So you mentioned like Munich, Milan. Was that like basically 4 fashion shows?
Yeah, exactly. It was, yeah, for like Fashion Week in Milan, you go there for like a month.
To go from your farm in Lewis County to end up at Fashion Week, like what happens at European fashion show? What does that even like help us other Appalachians understand like what's even going on there?
Hey, honestly, people take it as serious as like sports. I mean, it's like literally, yeah, they're like backstage, people are getting pumped up. And I mean, I was a little bit, again, I was older when I got into this compared to a lot of the folks. I mean, a lot of the folks were like
Clapping signs that say like model like a champion today.
Yeah, exactly. It felt like it at times. At times I was looking around like, are you serious? Like, just walking down and walking back, like just turn left.
Don't fall down.
Yeah, don't fall out. Now, I mean, obviously it's a big business. There's a huge culture just around it with the parties and the culture surrounding it is enormous. In Europe, it's even bigger than I think in some ways than New York is. And New York Fashion Week is obviously a very big deal. Again, I don't know what it's like now or what it's been like for the last 12 years, but it was a very big deal in Milan. And in Germany, they shoot a lot of catalogs, and that's really as a model, like it's backwards way of thinking. Like you think that like being in Walmart's not good, but actually Walmart is like the best paying job. Being in GQ is like $150 a day. Being in Walmart's like 5,000. So
not what you would think.
It's basically the opposite. The more high fashion you are, the less you likely are paid. But you have to have the high fashion stuff to get the Walmart job. So you got to build a book essentially and this portfolio, and it takes time. And based on that, this is typically why people choose you for jobs. And yeah, so I got the different companies like JCPenney's out of Dallas, so they shoot out of Dallas, or they did. There was a Sports Authority was a thing back when I was doing it, and that was in Colorado. So they fly you out to Colorado to, use fake snow and shoot snowboarding stuff. And yeah, it was very interesting, and it was awesome. Honestly, it was great. It was also something that was very temporary. I mean, I didn't. Yeah, well, I mean, some people try, and I remember running into those people on castings, and being on some jobs even with some dads, and talking, and I just couldn't imagine it. It's just such a rough, unpredictable thing, and to try to do that with family and the cost of living, obviously, in these cities is crazy. So I knew for me that there was a time to pull the string, and I was, it very much coincided with the collapse of the banking system and inspiration from Sustain You all at once. Because when Lehman went down and the banks started to close, the first thing that these companies did was they cut their advertising budgets. So the writing was on the wall for me, at least. Like, okay, this is a good time you should exit now. Don't wait too much longer. And I had an idea, and I felt that by that point I was very passionate about this, and I thought I could really make a go of it. So
tell us about your idea.
Yeah, so my idea was that, I was a sociology major at Notre Dame, and we studied a lot about kind of the economic sectors of the country. And I knew that the South was once a very strong textile region. I didn't realize that the North also was as well until later getting into the business. But I thought, what if you utilize the infrastructure that already exists to create apparel that was made in the United States, but instead of using the conventional materials like cotton or polyester that take a lot of resources, what if you use something better than that? What if there was a better material? So the quest became twofold. One, after NAFTA in the 90s, a lot of the apparel companies went overseas. I think in 94 something, like 40% of our clothing was actually made in the United States. And then
Interestingly, if folks know West Edge, this is the story. It was the Corbin suit company that made men's suits at what's now our West Edge factory here in Huntington. And it outsourced to Chile after NAFTA. So it's just interesting to draw that parallel.
Yeah, no, exactly. It's amazing that the connection of today Mountain Mindful with what had happened and then how that idea even kind of came to be. And yeah, it trends well with history. There was a mass exodus. By the time that I started Sustain You in 2009, I think it was 2% of the clothing we wore was from the United States. So just in that short amount of time, it just was just a mighty exodus. I really thought, one could other factories in the Carolinas or other areas that could actually make clothing, and I just began the search of finding some entrepreneurs that were willing to do that or are doing that, and then also figuring out what is a better material, like what is actually better than conventional materials, because there was a lot of things out there. And again, the inspiration for all this came from kind of falling for a greenwash product that was from a material that was supposed to be better, but in the end, it wasn't better. So I didn't want to get blindsided myself with starting a business predicated on something and it actually not being as good as it could be, with the understanding that nothing's perfect. And but there is better, that we can do better. So so I basically moved from New York to my parents' house in West Virginia. So I moved back to West Virginia. From there, I started making trips to the Carolinas to these factories and learning how to make clothing, how to make t-shirts particularly. That was, the idea was always about t-shirts, kind of going back to the shirt. So I was fortunate enough to meet some people that had a lot of experience in textiles, and they were willing to kind of take me under their wing and teach me, what it means to knit fabric or what it means to sew something, like the steps that are involved. And it was a good year of just apprenticeship, unpaid, to just understand even how do I even start, and I definitely went through essentially a training on apparel in a very fast manner, but in a way that I think maybe some fashion schools don't even do justice to, because I got to understand a little bit from the ground of like, how do you actually make a product, not just conceptually, but actually. So started there, and decided on recycled fabrics as being a better option. There's been technology to recycle polyester for quite a while. The North Face and Patagonia have been doing it with fleece. The ability to take it down into a finer fabric was not as prevalent back then. In fact, it was kind of a newer thing to have recycled polyester, 100% recycled. So I basically decided on that was going to be the fabric, recycled poly mixed with recycled cotton, because it still needed to feel like a t-shirt. It couldn't feel so different. The people weren't willing to wear it, the same as they would a t-shirt. So it needed to kind of feel the same. It needed to be in somewhat of the same ballpark.
That's like the tension of a social enterprise, the balance between, you have this mission you're trying to achieve, but it's a market-based strategy. So you can't get so far out in front of your consumer that you're not in touch with the market.
Absolutely. And honestly, there were times when that decision was really hard. It was a hard decision, because especially in the formation of the business, people regularly try to pitch me on, well, you could do it this way. You don't have to worry, like, why are you doing it the hard way, essentially? And my whole answer was, well, if we do it that way, we're not really doing what we say we are. And it's just another business. Like, you're not really trying to address stuff that I feel passionate about. So, again, it's the harder road to hoe, but like, I think at the end of the day, I was really proud of what I was able to offer. And sure, it was definitely bumps along the way. I mean, very sometimes giant boulders, but I was happy to sell what I was selling, and through experience, through trial and error, through some very patient investment, we were able to start scaling the business and start working with some national clients and grow it.
Give us some highlights, some of the clients.
So we started working with kind of early on, we got a contract with the Boy Scouts of America to do some stuff, then started working with Ben and Jerry's. We started working with Ford Motor Company as they started to really focus on the green technology. The concert venue business was something that, there's a lot of artists that are very passionate about the environment. So their merchandise, they wanted to kind of reflect that. So we're able to really tie into some of the artist-driven merchandise companies, Reverb, which is a really big leader in that. We got to do some big events like Bonnaroo and Austin City Limits and Lollapalooza. And then we started working with the manufacturers. Music really started opening up the doors for us as a business. We started seeing that this community really cared about this. And fortunately, through some chance meetings, I was able to kind of get some one-on-one time with some CEOs that were decision makers, and they started kind of switching over to our stuff. I think this whole time the licensing in college was always in my head, but I wasn't sure the angle in which how to do it and do it in a way that wasn't just a one-off, like actually do it in a big way. So we grew the business. We started getting these college licenses like Notre Dame and others. But I think we really didn't start focusing on sports until we got the MLB and NBA signed on, which were obviously giant contracts and giant clients.
And around this time, as you're growing, it was Ray Daffner of the Appalachian Regional Commission who connected you and I. And I think part of the reason he thought to connect us is we were both trying to think creatively about how to develop a workforce in the recovery community. I think was the connection that he realized between us.
Exactly. Yeah, I can remember where I was. I was in Cleveland, the Cavaliers Stadium, actually. We were doing something, and I remember talking to Ray and him mentioning you. Kind of my nature is like I'll just call because I could wait on an email, but I'm kind of a more impulsive type.
Sort of like a bulldog in that regard.
Yeah, I truly am. It's my mom said I'm the best badger she's ever met. Which I don't know if that's a compliment, but in certain circumstances, it serves you well. And obviously, for us, it did. So yeah, I think I didn't really, again, when we connected, it was really kind of unpeeling an onion. And the more that I got to know what Coalfield was doing, it was so much of what you saw was what I saw. And it just seemed like a natural thing. Like, how can we work together, and how can we scale the bigger picture in a more effective way? So it was it was one of those conversations that really turned the lives around. So
absolutely, the first conversation we went way over. I think we realized we shared a lot in common, very similar values, similar vision for the West Virginia economy. And Sustain, you ended up coming into the Coalfield Development family of social enterprises. And then it has evolved into what is today Mountain Mindful, which is reclaimed, recycled products, apparel still, also now some hats and beanies and sweatshirts thrown in there, self-care products and home goods made out of recycled, reclaimed wood. So totally check out mountainmindful.com. And now some of the earliest origins of how that came to be.
Yeah, it's great. It's great stuff too. I mean, I can attest to how this has kind of evolved and the quality of the products. It's exciting where this could go and where it's going.
And we keep working together today. So Chris now leads something called our Seed Fund at Coalfield Development. I'd love you to tell folks about that.
For most entrepreneurs, the biggest hurdle is not necessarily a good idea or even the drive to get something done. It's money. Unless you come from a place where you have access to capital, just having a good idea doesn't necessarily mean you're going to get a loan. And especially for that early stage entrepreneur, it can be a really big struggle. So the Seed Fund is a wholly owned subsidiary of Coalfield Development. And what we do is we invest smaller amounts of capital into some of these budding social enterprises to help them in scaling their vision to get them to that next level. where they can be either bankable or investable. It's exciting work. There's so many great entrepreneurs out there, and the work that's been started, prior to me coming on board, is just incredible. And it's really amazing what's out there and what the seed fund can do as we look to scale it.
You're doing a great job with it. And you've got personal experience, I think, that really helps you connect with those entrepreneurs and support them. It can be lonely too. I mean, startups, it's like exciting, but also like, you find yourself in your parents' basement and trying to pay vendors, and it can be lonely too, right?
Yeah, and I think it's sometimes when you're an entrepreneur, you do feel like you're on an island, and especially if you're in a smaller enterprise, and it really comes down to just a couple people or even just one person. As you know too, it's great to get the write up, everybody patting your back, but the reality of it is mainly
Drudgery.
you're grinding, you're grinding and you're stressed.
Trying to survive. Yeah.
Right. And again, I think all of us, like, through these journeys of creating social enterprises, like, you've had your mountaintops, and you've also had your valleys, and everybody likes to talk about the mountaintops, and but what I've learned in life is that people rarely relate to you in your strengths. They mainly relate to you in your weaknesses. And so being able to kind of talk through some of these situations with entrepreneurs that are maybe facing payroll, payroll's coming up, how do we pay it? Thinking outside the box. I think one of my skill sets that I think is grown very strong in the last 12 to 14 years is contingency planning in my head. I think if anything I can bring to the table is, if something hits the fan, I think I can help figure a way around it. So
think through them, pick the best one.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a skill that I think it's a skill like a lot that I don't think you can get it unless you've experienced it.
Ben Ing, who runs the Eye Center, he would call that effectuation. There's some research into, and it's a very rare skill set, and it's very common among entrepreneurs, this ability to work out different options and to sort of do that in real time. It is a skill set, and it takes honing.
Yeah, that's a cool word too, that it's called. And yeah, no, I think it's something that I don't think you're born with it. I think you may have some abilities in it, but I think that to hone them, you have to go through it. And it is something that it's a quality that you can share with others to at least help them start the process as they're going through things. And again, as I mentioned before, I think the biggest challenge facing our region is really the access to capital for the startups. And sometimes, you can really doubt yourself if you can't fundraise. And the seed fund has stepped in, to kind of help, alleviate some of that, so that these entrepreneurs can really just focus on what they're going to do. And I think it's a service that, I wish I had it in 2009, but obviously my journey was different, but it's great that we have it now. And I think there's just, incredible things in the future for it.
Last question. What are some of the biggest changes you've seen in Appalachia? I mean, maybe since growing up, but actually since becoming a social entrepreneur and founding Sustain You. I'd be curious to hear your answer to that. And then what are some of the biggest changes you're still hoping to see in the not so distant future?
I think the biggest change that I've seen, and this is maybe a general thing, but I think it relates to all of our work. I think I've seen I think we've always had pride in where we're from. But I think I've seen it not in a negative way, but in a positive way, change in the last. Exactly. Yeah, instead of sharing kind of our sufferings, but like being really proud of where we are from and what our families have done to get us here, and some of the shared experience in a positive way, not necessarily just in a negative way. So I've seen that change dramatically in the last 10 years, and so many people are they're representing West Virginia and Appalachia in this really positive way of being a unique culture and a place they're from. And I think it only adds to to our work, because a lot of the entrepreneurs are looking at these niches or these areas in which they could potentially start a business based on some of that, kind of state pride or allegiance to the area, or willingness to come back to the area to visit for tourism. So I see that growing. It's exciting. I think the thing I'd like to see more of is I'd like to see an exodus back into the state. I think, unfortunately, we just keep losing population, and I know so many people are so passionate about West Virginia and about Appalachia. My hope is that we can really carve out some industries for people to stay here and also to come back.
I just thought of one more question. I can't help it. Favorite Zoolander impression?
Favorite Zoolander impression? I think the blue steel comment is the one that I at least reference, at least that I use most frequently, and it's used on me by my family and friends the most. Anytime there's a family picture, my brother will always say, "Are you doing blue steel?" Like it just goes without saying at this point. So yes, those Zoolander references will continue on for the rest of my life, and I'm proud of them. So.
Well, Chris, it's quite a life journey that you've been on and that you're still on, and that now you're including your family with. And so it's fun to hear the longer version, and just keep it up, man.
I appreciate it. You as well, Brandon. It's you're an inspiration to the region, and I'm just so excited to see what the future holds. So appreciate you guys having me on this podcast, and look forward to working together in the years to come.
Absolutely. And everybody register for the Appalachian Social Enterprise Summit, October 3 and 4, here in Huntington at our West Edge factory and on the campus of Marshall University. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you.